Hello, everyone, and welcome to join this World Health Report 2025 launch event. Well, I guess many of you guys are new friends, and we'll probably also see some old friends here because in last year we also give this online launch event. Well, we know that every year we produce this World Health Report, discuss a lot of issues on the happiness, issues in the whole world. Well, as the one of the editors of the report, I'm very happy to give you a brief overview of the report this year. And after my presentation, a couple of our authors of different chapters will just discuss more detailed content in different chapters. Well, my name is Chen Wang. I'm one of the editor of the report. So I will start my presentation, and it will be followed by a couple of our co-authors. For example, Felix and Yuan and Ray and Fengyu. And then we have a panel discussion chaired by Alden. Well, now I'll just give an overview of the World Health Report 2025. Well, this World Health Report is a partnership of the Gallup, the Oxford Wellbeing Research Centre, the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and also the report's editorial board. Well, this report is produced under the editorial control of the editorial board. And the report was published by UNSDSN during 2013 and 2023. However, later from 2024, the report is a publication of the Wellbeing Research Centre at the University of Oxford. Well, our mission of producing this report is to publish well-being data and analysis that enables individuals, communities, organizations, and governments to understand and improve the quality of lives around the world. The current editorial board include the three founding editors, John Halliwell from UBC and Richard Laird from LSE and Jeffrey Sachs from Columbia University. And later we have three more editors who are the Jan Emmanuel Dinev from University of Oxford, and Larry Atkin from Simon Fraser University, and me from Xian Jiaotong Liverpool University. Well, this is a report. We focus on the impact of caring and sharing on people's happiness. Well, it's like mercy in Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. Caring is twice blessed. It blesses those who give and those who receive. So similar thing here. So in this report, we will show that caring and sharing have both of these effects. The benefits to the recipients of caring behaviors, and also the benefits to those who care for others. So this is the main theme of this year's research. So later you can see more details from the presentation of our colleagues. Well, here is the content of this year report. In chapter 1, we give a summary of all the following chapters. And chapter 2 is on the topic of caring and sharing, a global analysis of happiness and kindness. So here we also present the global rankings of happiness, which really attracted most media attention. So I will briefly introduce you the global ranking of happiness by country and also the ranking status of Asian countries. In chapter 3, we're talking about the sharing meals with others, and chapter 4 on living with others, chapter 5 on connecting with others, then chapter 6 on supporting others, chapter 7 on trusting others, and the last one on giving to others. You can see that all those chapters are talking about relations among people and how people share and care each other and how that kind of behaviors will affect our happiness. Well, for the global ranking of our happiness, which attract a lot of media attention, and we utilize this happiness measure, which is called control ladder. This is a survey question designed by psychologist Control. The question is asked this way. Please imagine a ladder which steps number from 0 at the bottom to 10 at the top. So on which step of the ladder would you say you personally feel you stand at this time? So our happiness score by country is just a simple average of people's response to this survey question. We never, design or create such a measure of happiness. We simply aggregate the survey measures of happiness. Well, this is the global ranking in this year. We used 2020, 2022 and 2024, 2023, 3 years average data to produce this year's ranking, as we have usually done. So we use the recent 3 years data to produce this year's global happiness ranking. So again, the Finland has been on the top, then Denmark second, Iceland third, and Sweden the fourth, and Netherlands the fifth. Well, so those kind of top countries are very similar to previous waves. Usually they are located in Northern Europe, and we also have some countries from America like Costa Rica. We also have a country from Asia like Israel, and like from America like Mexico. Those are countries who are also ranking very high. Well, while on the bottom, the rankings, we have some changes over years, but those countries who are ranked very low are also very similar to previous years. For example, Afghanistan, Sierra Leone, Lebanon, and Malawi, Zimbabwe, those countries which have been suffering a lot of economic, political, or other military crisis are usually on the bottom. But since this is an Asian launch event, I'll briefly share you the ranking status of some Asian countries and also regions. We have two columns over here. The left column shows the countries excluding those Western Asian countries, which are classified as the Middle East and Northern African region. So I did not show those countries in the left column. Well, we can see that the Taiwan province of China was ranked the highest, and the second one is Singapore, then followed by Vietnam and Thailand. But actually, Japan and Korea, even they are very much developed in terms of its economy, but its happiness scores are not very high. And China is number 16 this year, 68 this year, which have gained a lot of improvement in the recent years. However, if we consider those Western Asian countries, we can see that Israel is on number 8, and then followed by United Arab Emirates, and then followed by Taiwan and Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. So those 3 countries in Middle East are also doing very well in the ranking. Well, so this is just a very brief sharing of the WHR of this year and the global ranking, Asian rankings. Well, I can't give too many details about the caring and sharing topic. Our presenters later will give you more details. Okay, thank you. I will stop off here, and I'll give the floor to my colleagues to give you more details on caring and sharing. So, Felix, please.
All right. Thank you so much, Shen, for your presentation and for your introduction. I'm Felix Chang. Felix is Latin for happiness, and I also do happiness research. I'm really glad to be part of the Asian launch of the World Happiness Report this year, because I was born and raised in Hong Kong. Shen, I would just like to share a screen for my part.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So after Shen had tell us about national happiness ranking, my part of the presentation is tell you about, are people becoming more helpful or less helpful across years? So we're looking at the caring sharing part of the World Happiness Report. To do so, we conducted the largest studies to date, drawing data from the Gallup pool to understand global as well as regional trends in benevolent acts. So what do we mean by benevolence acts? We use 3 survey questions from Gallup, which ask whether or not participants have donated money, volunteered, or helped strangers in the past month. And then based on this free survey questions, we also calculated a measure of prosociality, which means whether or not someone has engaged in any of the 3 benevolence acts. So now first, I'm going to show you the global trends. The first thing that I want to draw your attention to is this. In 2024, 7 in 10 people have helped a stranger, donated money, or volunteered their time in the past month. And we should just look at this number and feel really good. This really, really high number. 7 in 10 people around us have helped someone, have done something nice in the past month. The next thing that I want to draw our attention to is that benevolence has been increasing rapidly post-COVID. And then in 2024, we see that comparing to 2023, we see that there's a significant drop in benevolence. But fortunately, this is still more than 10% higher than pre-COVID level if we look at 2017 to 2019. Next, we're going to zoom into Asian regions. So here are the regional trends in Southeast Asia, South Asia, and East Asia. When we're looking at regional trends, we see some similarities and differences. And we probably see more similarities than differences. But I do want to draw your attention to one main differences. So again, similar to the global trend, we see an overall increase in benevolence after COVID. But if we're just zooming into 2023 and 2024, we see a much more significant drop in benevolence in East Asia compared to Southeast Asia and South Asia. Similar to the global trend also, luckily, the level of benevolence is still significantly higher than pre-COVID level across all regions. So after talking about how helpful people are, we also look at whether or not people believe in the kindness of others. To do so, we draw from 3 other survey questions that ask, whether, like, if you drop a wallet, do you think a stranger, someone in your neighborhood, or the police will return the wallet to you? I'm sure we all have or know someone who have experienced losing a wallet. And when we are reviewing the literature and comparing behavioral studies to people perception, there's a very striking finding that people are generally underestimating the kindness of others. In other words, even though people generally don't really expect their wallets to be returned, when behavioral researchers actually try to drop wallets in different places, a lot of them will be returned. So what I'm trying to tell you is that people are a lot more helpful than we give them credit for. Next, we look at how these 2 things are linked to our happiness. And we found that both engaging in benevolent acts and believing in the kindness of others are linked to greater individual level happiness. And in fact, when we look at the magnitude of this benefit, it's even larger than, for example, getting unemployed or having a higher income. So to summarize everything a little bit, here's what I want you to know. In 2024, 7 in 10 people helped someone in the past month. That's great news. People are generally more helpful than we believe. And finally, helping others and believing in the kindness of others are linked to greater happiness. If I have to summarize my part of the presentation in one sentence, if you have the resources and time, go help someone. If you're struggling, people are more helpful than we believe. Ask for help. And the last thing I want to share with you is that while I'm an expert on global happiness, you are the expert of your loved one's happiness. Do we want our countries to become a happier country? Start by doing one thing's nice for your loved one. Thank you. I will turn it back to Shen.
Thank you, Felix. And next, we're going to invite Ian.
Hi everyone, my name is Yeun, and today I will talk about the chapters on sharing meals and living with others. Across different culture, gathering around the table and sharing meals together is one of the universal ways people connect with each other. And in chapter 3 of this World Happiness Report this year, the authors focus on meal sharing as a potential measure and indicator of social connection and an important factor contributing to subjective well-being. So this chapter look at the question like how often people around the world share meals with other people and how meal sharing is linked to people's social connection and well-being. To understand this, the authors ask straightforward questions to people around the world about how many times they had lunch or dinner with someone they knew in the past week. So first, looking at meal sharing by country, we see different colors in this map, which indicate the average frequency of meal sharing. So you will see the index here. So countries in purple color report frequent meal sharing, while countries in blue color report less frequent meal sharing with other people. And you see some blue colors in Asian region, and we find some countries with particularly low rates of meal sharing. Just to name a few, India, here, Bangladesh, Mongolia, Japan, Philippines, and South Korea. And when the authors focus more on shared dinners, the rate was especially low in some countries like Korea, Japan, Mongolia, with an average of 1 to 2 dinners shared with other people per week, while other countries, on average, they would report that they shared 5 or 6 dinners per week on average. And these country level differences were not fully explained by differences in people's income or education level or employment status, which indicates that meal sharing can be a unique indicator of subjective well-being and social connection. Then the authors look at the link between meal sharing and subjective well-being. And as you see in this chart, sharing meal, people who share more meals with others, they report higher subjective well-being in general. And the effect size was comparable to the effect of income or unemployment, which suggests a substantial link between meal sharing and subjective well-being. And in a nutshell, there could be different reasons of why people share their meals with others or not. But this report suggests that meal sharing could be a potential indicator and also policy target to promote population well-being. And I will also briefly introduce the next chapter on the topic of the link between household size, family relationship, and subjective well-being. And this chapter mainly look at the countries in Latin America and Europe, but I find this chapter still relevant to Asian countries, given that the single person household become more common in some of the Asian countries. And when they looked at the relationship between household size and subjective well-being, in both Europe and Latin America and Mexico, they found the inverted U-shape relationship between household size and subjective well-being, which suggests that people who either live alone or people who live in a large size of household, they will report lower life satisfaction than other countries. And that suggests that the reason could be driven by different things, either by relational satisfaction or economic dissatisfaction. But it's something important to note that the household size, living with others versus alone, could be a relevant factor to people's subjective well-being. Then with that, I will pass this to Ray, who will talk about the young adults.
Okay,
Hello,
thank
Ray,
you
it's
so
your turn.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Ray. I'm a postdoctoral researcher in the psychology department of Stanford University, working with Jamil Zaki. And today is my great pleasure to introduce our chapter, Connecting with Others, How Social Connections Improve the Happiness of Young Adults. So the central point of this chapter is that happiness is fundamentally social. And if you think about one moment that you feel the happiest in your life, it can be anything. It can be graduation or marriage or lying on a beach smelling the ocean. Chances are these moments involve other people. And this is not by accident. Decades of research show that social connection buffers people from the toxic effects of stress and significantly enhance subjective well-being. Just to give you an overview of this chapter, so first we draw on the Global Flourishing Study and the Gallup World Poll to characterize the current state of connection. And we focus on the young adult age group because this is a life period that's often accompanied by significant environmental changes as well as psychosocial developments. So here we're going to characterize social connection across places, across different age groups, and across time. And then second part of this chapter, which I won't present today, draws on an in-depth study that we ran at Stanford University to provide some more context on these global findings. So here in the survey, social connections characterized in two ways. On the one hand, we can have the quantity of social connection, which is measured using a simple question. Is there anyone that you feel close to in your life, including family and friends? And then the other is social support. When you're in trouble, how often could you count on people, like relative or friend, to help you whenever you need them? So if you ask the question, how connected are young people? Well, the answer is it depends on where you look. Overall, 17% of young adult population report not having anyone that they feel close to. And then here I want to highlight some Asian countries as well. For example, Japan stands out starkly with, unfortunately, over 30% of young adult population reporting social isolation. And in contrast, in countries like Philippines, they're on top of the chart. And these trends are also echoed in terms of social support. So what about social connection across age groups? Consistent with previous observations, we usually find that young adults are generally better connected compared to the older population. With regard to social support, we observe a U-shaped curve where both young adults and older adults are reporting higher levels of social support. And these patterns likely reflect the shifting priorities that come with age. For example, young adults may often focus on expanding their social networks, while older adults may prioritize fewer but emotionally closer relationships, optimizing their connection to benefit subjective well-being. And then lastly, we can look at social connection through time. So here, recent reports suggest that young adults are experiencing, for example, a decline in social connection and a rising loneliness. Yet I just showed you some figures on how young adults are more socially connected compared to the older age groups. These findings may seem contradictory at first glance, but examining the data over time here provides helpful context. Overall, we do show that indeed young adult population overall demonstrates a very slight drop across the past 2 decades in terms of social connection. And this comparison is even more stark when we include the older age group, which shows stable and also increase in terms of social connection. So this demonstrates that the decrease in the quality of social connection here is specific to the young adult population and not observed across age groups. To quickly summarize, here in the chapter, we show that social connection is vital for well-being. Yet, unfortunately, social disconnection is prevalent and increasing among young adults. And then lastly, drawing from our in-depth study, we show that one factor that might contribute to this social disconnection is that many young adults may underestimate their peers' empathy, leading them to avoid connecting with others and miss out on opportunities for meaningful relationships. And with that, I want to thank all the supporters and thank you so much.
Thank you, Ray. Now we're gonna let another presenter, our final presenter from you. Please.
Thank you, Sean. Let me share my slides. Hello, everyone. My name is Fengyu Wu, and today it's a pleasure for me to present our chapter, Supporting Others, how prosocial behavior reduces deaths of despair. This is a joint work with my colleagues at Statec Research, which is the research division of National Institute of Statistics and Economic Studies of Luxembourg. First, what is deaths of despair? Deaths of despair refer to deaths due to suicide, alcohol-related problems, and drug overdoses. We use data on deaths of despair from the WHO mortality database, and due to the data availability and quality, our deaths of despair sample consists of 59 countries around the world from 2000 to 2019. In our sample of 59 countries, the average number of deaths of despair was 23 per 100,000 individuals aged 15 and above in 2019. The countries with the highest deaths of despair rates include Slovenia, Guyana, and the United States. We also found deaths of despair exceed the sample average in most Northern, Central, and Eastern European countries, as well as in Canada and Australia. Besides, Mediterranean and Latin American countries have rates well below the sample average. Among the 6 Asian countries analyzed in this chapter, namely the Philippines, Singapore, Japan, Thailand, the Republic of Korea, and Kazakhstan, the Republic of Korea and Kazakhstan reported the highest rates. Regarding the distribution of deaths of despair by course, we found more than 70% of deaths of despair are due to suicide, followed by alcohol abuse and drug overdoses. Even though suicide is the main cause in most of the countries in our sample, including the 6 Asian countries, there are some exceptions. For instance, in the United States, they are primarily driven by drug overdoses. Regarding deaths of despair by gender or age, we found they are more prevalent among men than women, and they are also much higher among older age groups. Looking to the change in deaths of despair from 2000 to 2019, we found deaths of despair have generally declined across the 59 countries except for a few cases. Specifically, high-income countries have lower rates of decline, and the countries with the most significant increasing trends include the United States, the Republic of Korea, and the Slovak Republic. Therefore, the Republic of Korea stands out among the 6 Asian countries with a recent high level and an increasing trend of deaths of despair, similar to the United States. And the rising trend of deaths of despair in the Republic of Korea is primarily driven by an increase in suicides among men aged 60 and over. Using data from the Gallup World Poll and fixed effects regressions, we found increasing prosocial behavior, including donating money, volunteering time, and helping others, is linked to decreasing deaths of despair. Specifically, a 10 percentage point increase in the share of people engaging in prosocial behavior is associated with about 1 fewer deaths per 100,000 annually. For a country like the Republic of Korea, with an adult population size of approximately 45 million, this translates to about 450 preventable deaths per year. One important lesson from our study is that societies could benefit from investing in conditions that support prosocial behavior, which fosters supportive, cooperative, and trusting environments and reduces deaths of despair. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. If you are interested in our chapter, please feel free to read more into it through the World Happiness Report website. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This concludes the presentation about the chapter contents of WHR 2025. Now I will give the floor to Eldon, who will moderate our panelist discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Shun. Hi, everyone. It's really great to, I'm just looking through the participant list, and it's really great to have people joining us from across the world and especially from Asian regions. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you. I'm joined by my colleagues Ronak and Yukiko. So we'll be spending a couple of minutes each to be sharing our reflections. And I'll go first and I'll introduce myself. My name is Alden Lai. I'm a board member at the Wellbeing for Planet Earth Foundation. We're based in Japan. I'm also an assistant professor at New York University, and I'm also a native of Singapore, which is why I'm here as well. So I'm really glad to be here. I'll just start off my contributions with two main points, and the first would be if you have yet to make this conclusion already, it's that social connections are incredibly important for our happiness, whether it's in terms of sharing meals with others, or whether it's helping others or volunteering, etc. It is incredibly important. There's one point I would like to point out from the chapter in terms of on sharing meals with others is that just by knowing the number of meals that someone has shared with people they know for the past week, that information is as important as knowing is as important in predicting happiness, subjective well-being that's comparable to unemployment status and income. We know for the longest time that unemployment status or even income, they do have an effect on individual happiness. But the report and this groundbreaking work is literally finding out that the number of meals and the fact that people are sharing meals with each other, that is pretty comparable in terms of understanding the impact on well-being as well. And I think that is really incredible in terms of like, well, it's eating is actually a universal act, and we do it multiple times a day. And the impact on well-being is really being discovered for kind of like the first time. The other thing I would like to mention is that the benefit of data like this is that it enables us to ask even better questions. So as I was going through the report, I was just, my brain was just firing in terms of why or how. So I'll give one example is that I was really quite surprised to see that the number of deaths of despair is really increasing for the Republic of Korea. So I think really hoping that maybe we can have this discussion around that in terms of perhaps finding out the why that's like driving deaths of despair in Korea, for example. And there's also diversity in terms of the number of meals that people are sharing in different regions. So for example, in Southeast Asia, the number of meals being shared per week, it's close to 8, whereas in South Asia, it's close to 4. So even within the Asian region, there's a huge diversity in terms of the number of meals that people are sharing with each other. But at the same time, the impact of meal sharing also differs by region. And it seems that based on data, the impact of sharing a meal with others is there's a higher impact of that in Northern America compared to kind of like regions in Asia. So on average, we know that sharing meals is really helpful for well-being. But even when you were to look at the distribution across different regions, we find that the impact is actually less in certain Asian regions. And I think that it basically creates the question of why and how, which becomes super interesting. So anyway, I'll give a pause here and I'll just maybe give a shout out to the audience. If you have got questions for the panelists, for the authors, please feel free to put them in a chat box, and we're hoping to save some time for Q&A later on. And I'll pass it to Yukiko next. Thank you so much.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Yukiko Uchida. I'm as a professor in Kyoto University Institute for the Future of Human Study, Human Society. And as I'm a cultural psychologist, I'm really interested in this kind of the analysis, and then also the longitudinal patterns of the social connection, and then also the well-being scores. And so first of all, I'd like to say that it is important to acknowledge the interpreting the comparing average scores alone has some limitations, of course, because there are several, of course, the meaning structure is quite different across context. Like sharing meal, for example, that is very related to the custom of the each cultural context. And then also like what they understand the social connections, or also the social participation itself is very differ across the context. So we have to acknowledge that kind of limitation. But on the other side, I'm so interested in some issues that raised from this pattern of analysis. For example, like social participation and then loneliness is the kind of the one important factor to think about the happiness or unhappiness. Because recently in Japanese context, there are many people are discussing about how the loneliness strikes the health and the subjective well-being in especially in urban area in Japan. For example, the most people like the contrast to the meal sharing, they have sometimes the koshoku. Koshoku is the individual, like alone food, the eating. It's very connecting to the loneliness. And then also like some people don't have some place to be, like to belong. So that's a quite, again, the important question of the how much we have some social connections within the society. Like some people, of course, like during the working hours, they feel like they are connected to the company, but after retirement, they worry about the where they belong to. Like so. Again, the social participation and the avoiding loneliness is the key factors for many countries, I think. And so one solution is having some community, the community bond and the social networks, and making some opportunities and chances to everyone can connect with someone. So that's a kind of the outs. Sometimes, of course, they are suffering from the relationship with family members, and also suffering from some communication with neighborhood. But what kind of thing we have to do is setting up some institutional level, like a societal level or community level, that providing some place to belong to. So that is the key point. And then also like not like just a single place to belong is quite, sometimes very just tight social norm is the somehow constraint of the seeking well-being in a diverse way. So we have to set up some multi-level of the place to participate. So the kind of third place, for example, that is quite important. Not only just a home, or not only just a workplace, and not only just a school, but also third place that is maybe functioning well to the seeking some social participation. And then especially in Japanese context, many people are suffering of they are really worried about making some trouble to others. So because of this, they are so interdependent, but because of this, afraid is very strong. They cannot do anything for other people. That's a kind of the another side of the interdependence. So again, maybe feel free to connect with some people with the kind of the psychological safety is also important. Yeah, that's my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yukiko, for sharing. Next, we will have Ronak.
Yeah, okay. So, hi everyone, I'm Ronak, and I am a senior research fellow at the International Institute for Population Sciences in India. And also, I was a co-author in last year's report where we shared our findings on differences in life satisfaction among Indian older adults. So, I mean, in this year's report, also, yeah, it brings pretty interesting findings. And one of the positive things to note is that since I'm here as a panelist to share my perspective on India and South Asia in general, so what we see in case of South Asia is that on average in like every major country in South Asia has seen a decline in this year's rankings compared to last year. And that kind of sums up the current situation in South Asia. You see, while we have seen a lot of civilian and political unrest in countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan come up. But when I talk with respect to India, and like being from India myself, I can say that India this year has seen an improvement in their rankings. Last year it was ranked 126th among all the countries, and this year it's 118th. A marginal improvement, I would say. And so, also, one of the major talking points that evolved in last year was like India being ranked below countries like Nepal and Pakistan, and the same trend also we can see it in this year's report also. It's interesting how this finding comes up. But one thing to note is that this year India has also decreased the gap between those countries, so that's a positive thing to look forward to. And when we look into further details of how like India has improved in this year's ranking, I think the major contributing factors this year has been improvement in areas like social support. Like India basically has a tight knit cultural society basically, where social support is generally put forward or put above or taught to children here from their childhood. And India does has generally done well in all the WHR reports in terms of social support, and this year India has seen an increase in the social support scores. And other contributors, like you see improvement in there has been improvement in widespread positive emotions among people in India, and there has been improvement in volunteering activities. But also there is some contrary to these improvements, there are India has also seen decreases in factors like corruption scores. I mean, since WHR or World Happiness Report also has an aspect on business, on perceptions of people about corruptions in businesses. So India has seen a decrease in the corruption score, and that has had a negative impact on their rankings. So yeah, that's pretty much the Indian perspective on this year's WHR report. And also there has been interesting insights on other countries, and I look forward to your questions further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronak, for your contributions as well. We would like to open the floor for kind of like questions. So if I could invite all the authors and panelists and speakers to turn on your video as well. So I'm really curious. So we'll probably kick off by, well, first of all, we have a wealth of experience, kind of an expertise within the room from your research, kind of, and also your lived experiences, and also through conversations with colleagues, etc. So just to kick off the Q&A part, maybe we can discuss in what ways are Asian countries good at supporting kind of like people's well-being, taking into account the results and the themes that we're seeing in this year's World Happiness Report. Wondering if people have any thoughts you would like to share.
Well, thank you, Elton. Probably I can just give a little piece of, my own thoughts on this issue. You can see that actually some East Asian countries like Japan, Korea, they are doing very well in terms of economic progress. However, their happiness levels are not as good as, in countries like even the Philippines, which is clearly a developing country. Well, if you look at, actually in chapter 2, we have a 6-factor model to explain the international variations of happiness. Well, I've done some previous research on this topic to check, what's going on in Japan, Korea, in terms of their non-economic factors in supporting the happiness. Well, one of them is like in Korea, for example, their sense of freedom in our life is quite low. It's like their societies have a very narrow definition on success, so people do not feel they have many choices, and also that their perceived corruption in a country is tend to be high. Even we know that they are quite a advanced country, developed country, but still they have a lot of such kind of perceptions. Well, also their social support. In our 6-factor model in chapter 2, we don't use so many caring and sharing variables there, but just what we use, one of them is like, do you have anyone to count on? And when you have some difficulties in life, but still we can see that those variable, the values of this variable in those Asian countries, especially in some East Asian countries, are not very high. So I guess we can compare this with some Latin American countries who can see that this totally on the opposite. So many Latin American countries report, and people there report very high levels of social support. I think in terms of caring and sharing, some Asian countries are really kind of lagged behind. So there are a lot of rooms for improvement in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Shin, for that. We have an interesting question from Abu Bakr Muhammad Moki that was asking about how, well, the whole, the World Happiness Report this year, the whole theme is really caring and sharing. So we were really underscoring the importance of social connections. And the question was, are there no situations where connections with others causes more stressful situations, requiring kind of like someone to perhaps to maybe retreat a little? And I think that's a great question. And I think Yukiko hinted at this earlier on as well. And I think maybe this would be a great point for discussion in terms of, is there an optimal amount of social connection that is good for you, but then at some point it could also get a little stressful. So perhaps we can talk a little bit about that balance.
I can hop in and provide some of my thoughts on here. I do think there are definitely situations where social connections are the source of stress, right? We can think about, for example, breaking up with someone or conflict. Family conflict is perhaps a strong one in many East Asian countries where family bonds are strong. But even in times of this stress, where the stress is caused by interpersonal sources, a lot of times people will turn to other social connections to help alleviate that stress. You might think about when you're facing a breakup, many people may turn to other friends to either help talk through this or help alleviate these negative emotions. So in this sense, a social connection could also be a source of medicine or support in time of stress when interpersonal connection is causing the stress. But I do think that this type of support is vital, especially when people are experiencing interpersonal stress.
Thank you so much, Ray. Yeah, just a quick follow-up question for Ian too, because I think in the chapter on sharing meals, and I think we're getting a lot of interest among the audience in terms of sharing meals, there's an optimum number based on the research anyway, just in terms of if your people are sharing 13 meals with others kind of over the course of, I think it was a week or two, that seems to be optimum in terms of predicting happiness. And then it drops a little by the time you get to your 14th meal. So I'm curious if you could talk a little about that as well in terms of what does that data kind of like represent, and what does that tell us about the number of meals we should be planning with each other?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the optimal number for sharing meals, for instance, can look different by different individuals because everyone has different amount of social needs and they have different expected social connection that they would need for their good well-being. But when we just aggregate everyone also in the chapter, as Arden, you just pointed out, the gap of the difference, the changes in life satisfaction is bigger between sharing no meal with others to at least sharing one meal per week with other people. And that difference is the biggest. And then the life satisfaction goes a little bit by the number of sharing meals. But then actually, the most highest life satisfaction was among people who shared 13 out of 14 meals than people who share all the meals with each other. So just looking at this graph, we can say 13, but even that sounds quite big, you know, like lunch and dinner, all the meals together except for one meal. So instead of making that implication, I think the importance is having at least one meal with other people per week could actually make a big difference than having no meal with other people, dining alone all the time. But again, I think there is a culture variations and individual variations in terms of what is the optimal.
Thank you so much, Ian. Seems like our next course of action is to plan a lunch or dinner, kind of like with someone as well, just to get a boost of happiness. We have a great question from Lily. And I'd like to direct this question to Fengyu. So Lily said with great insights, pro-social activities seem to be crucial in improving subjective well-being. And the question is, are all forms of pro-social activities equally weighted, or are there some forms of pro-social activities that are more important for subjective well-being? And I'm wondering, Fengyu, if you've got any insights around that.
Thanks for the question. Just speak of our chapter, which is Death of the Sphere. And in our chapter, we found Death of the Sphere and subjective well-being are distinct concepts, but they are negatively correlated, meaning higher Death of the Sphere, lower subjective well-being. And when we look at the relationship between prosocial behavior and Death of the Sphere, we found first, as I briefly mentioned, higher prosocial behavior in general is related to lower Death of the Sphere. And what I didn't mention because of the time constraint is that donation played the most important role among the three forms of prosocial behavior. So as a role to protect people from Death of the Sphere. So in the case of Death of the Sphere, I would say donation plays the most important role in the society.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Fengyu. And just a quick follow-up question for Felix as well, because I think chapter 2 was talking about benevolence, and there was some kind of like mentions of different kinds of perceptions of benevolence. And I'm wondering if there's anything you could add to that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. To build on Fengyu's answer, I think one thing that we look at in the World Happiness Report is that there's a lot of cross-cultural differences in the most common form of benevolence. So there are definitely cross-cultural differences. Some culture, tends to help strangers. Some culture tend to volunteer. Other cultures tend to donate. But at the same time, in the chapter 2, we conducted one of the largest literature review looking at past research. And what are some of the pro-social acts that give people the most well-being benefits? So it turns out there are some common features. So in World Happiness Report, chapter 2, we talk about the 3 C's. It means that when you're doing something nice for someone that you care about, so the first one is caring. Helping someone that you care about versus helping a stranger, that tends to give you more benefits. The second C is choice. If you choose to do something, if you choose to, lean into something, into your strength to help someone based on, what you're good at or what you choose to do, you also tend to derive more benefits from it. And the third thing is clear impact. If we help someone and we clearly see, our actions on other people's needs, we also get more happiness from that. So going beyond the action, again, there are the 3 C's that helps bring greater benefits. So again, if you're helping caring others, if you choose to do so, and if you can see the clear impact.
Thank you so much, Felix, for that. I think next up, I would like to talk maybe a little bit more into projecting into the future. My next question would be directed at Shun. How do you, given that, Shun, given that you've been on the editorial kind of like team for a while now, how do you see the Asian happiness, the levels of happiness and subjective well-being changing over the next 10 to 20 years in the Asia region?
Well, Thank you, Alden. Well, for this kind of prediction, I mean, it's quite a challenging question. According to the past, I've seen that some Asian countries, for example, like China, have seen a lot of increase in the happiness. However, if you look at Japan or Korea, we didn't see so much progress, or even in some countries, we see a decrease of happiness. It's like even our economy is like growing always in most countries. However, happiness level is not like that. Sometimes we see increase, sometimes decrease. Not just in Asia, but you can see that in this year report we commented on the changes of happiness among those industrialized countries, for example, in Europe. Many of them actually have seen a decrease in happiness compared to about 10 years ago. So it's really hard to predict, but for me, I think like China or I would say probably we will see increase in future again. But for India, we can see that, as Ronak have said, we see a kind of very rapid decrease in the past decade. But in recent years, it started to increase a bit, but the ranking is still low because we use the recent 3 years average for the global ranking. I guess in future, we may see some increase in India's happiness. Well, we can also see that like Philippines and some other Thailand are doing well, and hopefully they will do better in the future. Anyways, it's a very difficult question to answer. I guess some countries are doing better in the future. Some others are really hard to predict because there are so many factors which are affecting happiness. Yeah, that's my comment. Thank you.
Right, thank you so much, Jen. And I want to come to Ronak too, just curious in terms of your thoughts for India in terms of just based off what Shen was just mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like it's an interesting thing to see, like in South Asia, where you majorly see countries have seen a decrease in their ranking. India has gained in the happiness rankings, and I mean that factor can mainly be attributed to, I guess, the civilian and political stability that we see in India. And like when you compare with South Asia, most of the countries, be it Bangladesh or Pakistan, has seen some form of social and sort of political unrest come in the last year, and that hasn't been the case in India. But I mean this increase in ranking is also marginal, and I think as Shun also mentioned, like compared to the rankings from the past 10 years, India still lags behind. India's best ranking in World Happiness Report has been 93, and it's the current ranking of 118 is still behind its best. And I think there's a lot of scope for improvement that India can make. And while we can gain insights from this year report is that like for factors that when terms of factors like whether a typical person in Indian person helps a stranger, or an Indian person has gained social support in terms of hardship. Those factors put India's population forward in terms of happiness. Factors like Indians' perception about corruption and their freedom, like freedom to decide what they choose to do with their life. I think those two areas need to see major improvement. And of course, like if we stay positive, if we focus more on improving in these two areas, on improving business perceptions, corruptions in it, and on improving freedom about what an individual chooses to do with their life, I think we would see an improvement in future.
Thank you so much, Ronak. I think we're all really optimistic. And just one final question for Ray as well, because we are interested in kind of like happiness among the general population, but there's certain communities, certain populations that we care a lot about as well, especially in terms of youth. And we're seeing sometimes encouraging trends and sometimes worrying trends. And I'm wondering, what do you think, how are the trends going to be like for youth in Asian regions going into the future, Ray?
Thank you so much for this question. This is so fascinating. And looking at trends among young adults and youth, especially at this time where we're facing a lot of changes in economy, in terms of family structure, as well as technology with social media, as well as generative AI. That's why we focus our chapter on this young adult population. And so far, we do see some promising, but also some concerning trends among youth. Specifically for the concerning ones, we see the drop in social connection, for example, and then the drop in happiness that we saw already from last year's World Happiness Report. In addition to that, we also see perhaps young adults, they're demonstrating a bigger variance, indicating that perhaps they're more influenced by these changes in society and technology. Some young adults, they're doing really well in the age of AI and social media, yet some other young adults are struggling more. So in terms of looking at the future, again, it's going to be difficult to predict, but I do think that we should pay close attention to the young adult trends, perhaps not only looking at the mean levels, but also looking at other indicators such as variance and other factors.
Thank you so much, Ray. With that, I would like to kind of like wrap up the discussion. I know that, we have many other topics that we could continue this discussion for a while, but we really would like to express my thanks to everyone here for taking your time to be discussing about this year's World Happiness Report, and also people online for joining us today. And hope to see you the next time. Thank you.